Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my FXmovies.20 channel? Thank you so much. The sunset slowly descended, casting a gentle amber glow on the white walls of Melissa Carter's modest home. The ceiling fan hummed steadily in the stillness, merging with the faint rustle of leaves outside to create a serene melody. However, within Melissa's study, that stillness was disrupted by an unknown disturbance, indefinable and unsettling. A haunting weight lingered in the air as she stood before her easel, trembling fingers clutching a paintbrush, yet no stroke had been applied to the unfinished canvas. Melissa, her softly curled brown hair cascading over her shoulders, resembled a statue trapped in time. The light from the desk lamp illuminated her face, accentuating her deep-shadowed eyes burdened with fragments of memory she had long sought to suppress. The door to the room was slightly ajar, a detail she could not discern as accidental or intentional. Melissa exhaled deeply and set the paintbrush down on the table, her hand brushing over the collar of her thin blouse as if attempting to dispel the heaviness clinging to her skin. A wave of emptiness surged within her, relentless and overwhelming, erasing any trace of focus. She could neither paint nor concentrate. She simply could not, experiencing an internal void. Melissa reclined in her chair, her gaze wandering to the window overlooking the dimly lit street leading to the tranquil neighborhood beyond. Lucas, her ex-husband's younger brother, had earlier indicated he would return late tonight. His absence afforded her solitude, a silence she believed she desired, yet she could not dismiss the peculiar solace his presence provided. Even the sound of his measured footsteps throughout the house had somehow mitigated her loneliness. Her hand absent-mindedly caressed the silver bracelet on her wrist, a gift from her ex-husband. Her eyes fluttered shut, revealing his image unbidden, his calculated smile, the deceitful sweetness of his words, and the eventual betrayal. Melissa inhaled deeply, but the breath felt superficial, as if her chest were constricted. It was all in the past, she whispered to herself, though the words offered no real solace. And then faintly, there it was, the softest sound of movement in the hallway just outside her door. Melissa's eyes flew open, her heartbeat quickening. Someone or something had just passed by. She tried to dismiss it, reasoning that it must have been the wind, but as her gaze shifted toward the door, she saw it moving slowly, purposefully, as if nudged open by an unseen hand. Lucas stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the dim light spilling in from the living room. His youthful face was sharp and defined, bearing an expression both familiar and unsettling. His bright eyes held something unspoken, something that sent a cold shiver down Melissa's spine as he locked his gaze on hers, not merely by chance but with intent. Lucas's voice wavered, breaking the charged silence. "You're back already?" He nodded but didn't look away. The door was open. "I thought you needed something," Lucas said softly, his voice low but clear, almost as if to justify his presence. Yet Melissa knew he had seen her. He had seen her vulnerability, the one she had tried so hard to keep hidden, and perhaps even the yearning she had fought to suppress. The silence stretched between them, only seconds passing but weighted with an eternity's worth of tension. Melissa rose slowly from her seat, taking a tentative step toward the door, but her feet felt as though they were anchored to the floor. The air seemed thicker now, charged, as if the room itself had become a cage for everything they were too afraid to admit. She forced a smile, a frail attempt at normalcy, but Lucas's penetrating stare seemed to strip away every mask she wore. "It's nothing," she said, her voice hollow, empty even to her own ears. Lucas slightly inclined his head, acknowledging her words, yet his expression revealed his skepticism. His gaze lingered a moment too long, as if he were contending with a truth he was unprepared to articulate. Then, without another word, he turned and departed. Melissa remained motionless, her heart racing in the wake of his exit. The hallway beyond her door had fallen silent, yet the charged atmosphere persisted in the room, pressing down on her like an invisible weight. Something had shifted, unspoken but undeniable, and Melissa recognized with chilling certainty that whatever had commenced tonight would not conclude here. She closed the door to her study. After Lucas departed, the atmosphere in the room remained constricted. In her chest, she leaned against the door, her hands quivering as they pressed against her chest, trying to regulate her breathing, but nothing came easily. Her emotions surged within her, tumultuous and wild, surrounding her like a painting distorted beyond recognition. She approached the window, her gaze unfocused as it wandered to the small yard outside. Uninvited yet overwhelming in their clarity, old memories surfaced. She envisioned herself as a younger version of herself, her softly curled hair cascading over her shoulders, standing in this very house. But at that time, she was not alone. A man had previously entered this space as if it were his eternal domain. James, her ex-husband, had once been the object of her fervent affection. Melissa had envisioned a lifetime with him. He was charming, intelligent, and vivacious, qualities that had enthralled her from their initial encounter. Melissa had sacrificed everything for him, abandoning a rising career in interior design to marry him and build a family. Back then, she had believed she had it all, but those years had been nothing more than a fleeting dream. James wasn't the man he appeared to be. After 3 years of marriage, Melissa discovered his infidelity. At first, it was the little things: hastily ended phone calls, mysterious text messages lighting up his screen. Then one night, when she decided to confront him, she realized she was just one name among many. Melissa remembered vividly the day she confronted James. And his eyes showed no remorse, only a faint hint of arrogance, as though he believed she would forgive him because she had no other choice. But she didn't. Despite her shattered heart, Melissa chose to leave, taking with her the unbearable pain she never thought she could survive. The divorce didn't just strip her of the love she once trusted, it stole her belief in herself. Her eyes left the yard and fell on her work, where her unfinished paintings lay scattered. After the divorce, art had become her only solace. Each brushstroke served as her means of expressing the truth she was unable to articulate. However, even art was unable to completely mend the wounds inflicted on her heart until Lucas entered her life. James's younger brother moving in with her had seemed like a temporary arrangement. He needed a place to stay during his internship, and she couldn't refuse given their amicable relationship. But the longer he stayed, the more unsettled Melissa became. Lucas reminded her of James, not in his appearance but in the small things: the way he tilted his head when he was deep in thought, the way he moved with a quiet yet decisive grace. But Lucas wasn't James. He was different, youthful, passionate, and perilous in a manner Melissa had never foreseen. What further unsettled her was Lucas's gaze. Unlike James's calculating scrutiny, Lucas's eyes appeared to seek something profound, something concealed within her, a facet of herself she was uncertain she wished to reveal. He exuded a sense of familiarity that felt alien, a paradox that rendered her inscrutable. Melissa redirected her attention to the easel, her fingers grazing the unfinished canvas. She yearned to paint, to liberate herself from the maelstrom of memories, yet she found herself incapable. Her hands trembled as she recollected Lucas's gaze, which lingered, unspoken yet palpably present. She could not comprehend the unfolding events, but deep within, Melissa recognized one undeniable truth: Lucas was not the issue. The problem lay within herself. Loneliness, coupled with her unhealed wounds, ensnared her in a spiral from which she doubted she could extricate herself. The shadows of her past intertwined with the light of her existence, obscuring the distinction between reality and illusion. However, one truth emerged clear and irrefutable: Lucas's presence had ignited something within her. In her past, she had buried something long ago, and now Melissa was uncertain of her ability to control it. She locked the door and proceeded to her study, yet the tension from Lucas's gaze persisted, enveloping her like a silent wave. She ambled toward the kitchen, seeking tranquility in the stillness of the night. The gentle clink of glass resonated as she poured herself a glass of red wine. The opulent liquid swirled in warm tones beneath the subdued illumination, yet her heart raced. Frigid and snared in a web of emotions she could not decipher. Lucas materialized abruptly, his robust shoulders occupying the kitchen entrance. "You're still awake?" he inquired, his voice subdued as if wary of disrupting the delicate tranquility. Melissa pivoted, and the instant their eyes connected, an unnamed tension seized the atmosphere between them. His gaze lingered on her for just a moment too long. "I required solitude," she responded briefly, indicating the bottle of wine on the counter. "Do you want a glass?" Lucas nodded and entered, the distance between them diminishing with each step. Melissa observed the subtle warmth emanating from him and how the gentle kitchen light accentuated the depth of his eyes. She offered him a glass, her hand trembling slightly as his fingers grazed hers. "Are you okay?" Lucas inquired, his tone composed yet tinged with subtle apprehension. His gaze, sincere rather than intrusive, made Melissa feel as if she were under scrutiny, her meticulously shielded thoughts laid bare. She took a slight step back, attempting to regain her composure. "I'm fine," she asserted, though her voice lacked the conviction she desired. Lucas did not avert his gaze. "I'm not so sure about that," he said. His words were gentle, but they carried a weight that couldn't be ignored. "Since earlier today, I couldn't shake the feeling that something shifted between us." Melissa's eyes darted to his, and in that instant, it felt as though time had frozen. "We shouldn't talk about this," her voice wavered, the words barely holding together the wall she'd spent so long building. But Lucas took another step forward, closing the gap until they were only a breath apart. "If we shouldn't, then why can't I stop thinking about you?" And why can't you seem to look away from me? His question, paired with the intensity in his gaze, left Melissa speechless. It felt as though she were teetering on the edge of a fragile line, caught between what she knew was right and what her heart was yearning for. But he didn't press further. The truth in his eyes said more than words ever could. There was sincerity, a closeness, and something far deeper than she could bring herself to name. "Lucas, you're so much younger than me," Melissa said softly, though even as the words left her lips, she knew they were more for herself than for him. "I want to be clear, age is not a factor for me," Lucas responded with unshakable conviction, asserting that what is truly important are his feelings and what he believes Melissa feels as well. Melissa bowed her head, unable to formulate a response. But when she eventually raised it again, Lucas's stare remained steadfast, constant, warm yet resolute, silently assuring her that all would be well if she could relinquish her fear. In that instant, Melissa remained silent, merely absorbing the warmth of Lucas's breath drawing nearer, his presence akin to a tempest, subtly dismantling every barrier she had endeavored to maintain. Rather than a detonation, the moment persisted leisurely, akin to a solitary note suspended in the atmosphere. Melissa was uncertain of what would follow. However, she recognized that she could no longer evade the reality of her situation, regardless of its nature or potential. Melissa remained still in her study, her hands tightly clasped as if to contain the tempest of emotions threatening to overflow. The soft illumination from her desk lamp highlighted the unfinished painting before her, yet the muted hues on the canvas could not conceal the turmoil in her mind. Lucas's image persisted, characterized by his intense gaze, the conviction in his voice, and the intimacy she had not experienced in years of solitude. She attempted to suppress these feelings, but they ignited within her like a fire, intensifying with each effort to extinguish them. She rose abruptly, intending to pour another glass of wine to steady herself, but a gentle knock at the door halted her. Her heart constricted. She did not need to inquire who was on the other side, as she already knew, which unsettled her. "Come in," she said, her voice quavering, uncertain of her own words. The door creaked open, revealing Lucas. The dim light from the hallway behind him cast shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp contours of his jawline and the softness of his expression, a curious amalgamation of strength and vulnerability. He did not enter immediately. Instead, he leaned against the door frame, his gaze locked onto hers. In that moment, neither spoke, yet Melissa could sense the palpable tension in the air between them. The atmosphere grew oppressive, laden with unexpressed tension that weighed heavily on her chest. "I couldn't sleep," Lucas finally said, his voice piercing the air like a whisper through the stillness. "You're not sleeping either." Melissa compelled a smile, however it quickly wavered. She was aware that Lucas might perceive its insincerity. "No, I merely required some time alone." Lucas entered, gently closing the door behind him. He remained silent, however his slow, deliberate approach towards her heightened Melissa's pulse. In a moment of urgency, she instinctively recoiled, her body pressing against the edge of the work surface, her hands gripping it tightly as if it were her sole anchor amidst the tumult of emotions threatening to engulf her. "You are attempting to evade this," Lucas remarked, his gaze unwavering, which only intensified her desire to draw nearer. Melissa opened her mouth, intending to articulate anything, but the words eluded her. Before she could respond, Lucas positioned himself directly before her, close enough for her to sense the faint warmth of his breath. His eyes probed hers, seemingly searching for answers to the unspoken questions she was not prepared to express. "Lucas, we cannot," she murmured, her voice faltering under the burden of her uncertainty. "Why not?" Lucas inquired, his tone subdued yet persistent, questioning whether her reluctance stemmed from his identity as James's brother or from an aversion to confronting emotions. She was reluctant to acknowledge his words, which penetrated her defenses, targeting the very essence of the barrier she had constructed over time. Melissa was rendered speechless, her gaze locked with his, and for the first time, she refrained from concealing her feelings. There was no denial, no rejection, only vulnerability and a quiet, unspoken capitulation. Lucas extended a hand, lightly brushing his fingers against her. The touch was tender, yet it ignited a long-buried sensation within her. "I do not wish to cause you pain," Lucas stated softly, his voice now warm and soothing, almost like a promise. "But I can't stop." Melissa felt as though her feet were rooted to the ground, but her heart was racing, screaming for her to acknowledge the truth she had been avoiding. She knew that everything would change if she let this happen, but she also knew that she no longer had the strength to keep running from it. And then, before reason could intervene, Lucas leaned in. The first kiss was tentative, like a gentle brushing against the shore, but it carried the force of everything they had both been holding back. Melissa felt his arms wrap around her waist, pulling her closer, and she didn't resist. Every feeling of guilt, fear, and doubt melted away, replaced by a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years. The small room seemed to hold its breath, enveloped in the stillness that followed. Melissa didn't know how long the kiss lasted, but when they finally pulled apart, Lucas's eyes remained locked on hers, steady and unwavering, as though waiting for her to say something. "There's no going back after this," Melissa said quietly, her voice barely audible. "I don't want to go back," Lucas replied, his voice firm and resolute. Melissa did not answer, she remained silent. Her eyes conveyed everything she could not articulate, and in that instant, she realized that regardless of the uncertainties or complexities that awaited her, this was significant. Neither could deny any longer that the following morning, sunlight filtered gently through the gaps in the curtains, softly illuminating the room as if to assuage the chaos that lingered from the previous night. Melissa opened her eyes, inhaling each slow, deliberate breath. The silence of the house was so profound that she could hear the chirping of birds outside the window. Yet within her mind, everything was far from tranquil. She sat up, her gaze drifting absent-mindedly toward the clear blue sky visible through the window. The events of last night felt like a dream, a whirlwind of emotions that had swept her far from the principles she had adhered to for so long. However, with daylight restoring reality, a weight settled in her chest. She pondered whether what they had shared was a mistake or, conversely, what she had always needed but had never dared to confront. A soft creak at the door interrupted Melissa's thoughts. Lucas stepped inside, still clad in the same t-shirt and jeans from the previous night. His expression exuded a quiet intensity, as if he were wrestling with something significant. He halted when their gazes met, a flicker of hesitation crossing his face before it was supplanted by determination. "I need to know, do you regret it?" "Melissa?" Lucas inquired, his voice steady yet gentle. His question penetrated her mind as sharply as a needle. Melissa remained silent, searching for an answer within herself. Regret? No, she did not regret it, but she could not dismiss the fear that had begun to engulf her. The fear that what had transpired might jeopardize their fragile connection. The fear that she might experience pain once more, just as she had previously. "Lucas," Melissa began, her voice quavering. "I do not entirely regret it, but I am apprehensive, fearful that we are transgressing a boundary from which we cannot return, concerned that this may ultimately cause us harm." Lucas moved closer, his steadfast stare locked onto her. "Do you believe our feelings are misguided? Do you think what transpired was not genuine?" Melissa shook her head in negation, indicating that continuation was unwarranted. "You are so young, Lucas. Your entire life lies ahead of you." Her voice faltered, as if the weight of her own words was unbearable. Lucas seated himself beside her, gently grasping her hands. "Do you genuinely believe I am concerned with any of that? Age, the past, or anything else? The sole focus of my concern is you, and I am aware that you sense it." Melissa gazed into Lucas's eyes, and the sincerity and resolve she perceived caused her heart to constrict. He was correct. She indeed felt that profound connection between them, a sensation she had never encountered with anyone else, not even in her unsuccessful marriage. However, she also recognized that this situation was complex, and the cost of what they had initiated could be substantial. "Lucas, you must comprehend this," she urged. "It does not solely impact us," Melissa remarked, her voice softening. "I have already endured significant loss. I am uncertain if I can take that risk again." Lucas nodded, seemingly recognizing the profundity of her fear. He refrained from arguing or probing further. Instead, he grasped her hands more firmly, his presence calm and reassuring in a manner that words could not express. "I will not compel you to decide at this moment," he stated, "but I am not relinquishing hope. You deserve happiness, Melissa." Melissa did not answer, yet she could not extinguish the little light of hope that flashed within her. Lucas departed, leaving her alone in the room. He did not urge her or demand anything from her, and this distinction made Melissa acutely aware of his uniqueness. It was not James; she had never encountered anyone like him before. Lucas did not anticipate her to assume a different persona, he merely desired her to be authentic. The remainder of the day unfolded in a blur. In tumultuous thoughts, Melissa aimlessly traversed the house, her mind a tempest of feelings. She painted, yet the canvas seemed to pulse with vitality, with colors unprecedented in her previous works, bold, chaotic, and imbued with raw emotion. Melissa found herself standing before her painting as evening descended. Her eyes meticulously traced each brushstroke, and it was then she recognized her inability to continue living in fear or evading her feelings. Melissa exited her studio and stepped onto the porch, where Lucas sat quietly beneath the dim glow of the porch light. He looked up at her, surprise flickering across his face before it transformed into a calmer, steadier expression. Melissa took a seat beside him, and for a moment, silence enveloped them. "Lucas," she finally spoke, her voice soft yet resolute, "I do not know what the future holds, but if you are willing, I want to try." Lucas met her gaze, and a slow, warm smile gradually spread across his face. He expressed his unwavering willingness, and in that instant, Melissa experienced a lightness she had not felt in years. They sat together beneath the tranquil night sky. The road ahead was ambiguous and potentially fraught with challenges, yet for the first time, Melissa felt no fear. This was not an ending, but rather a commencement of courage, trust, and love, liberated from the past.